So I hope your opinion will change after this panel.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Beltran, and I'm very happy to be here. My name is Noriko Takiguchi. I'm a journalist, a freelance journalist from Japan, based in San Francisco / Silicon Valley area. And I contribute to various Japanese media outlets on technology in general and technology business. And I also run a site on robotics called robonews.net. Today we have a great panelists on our session, and we are going to talk about automation and AI in journalism. What we hear is that the fear that our journalists going to be replaced by AI. But after you hear our panelists, you understand this is not what's happening. It's much more profound changes that we are going through. So can I invite our three panelists on the stage? And okay, so just to introduce, from your far left is Francesco Marconi, Manager of Strategy and Corporate Development of AP. And next is the David Alandete, sorry, and Managing Editor of El Pais. And to my right is Robert Unsworth, VP of Americas News Republic. And this is how we want to do it. I have asked all the panelists to show us maybe 5 minutes video or presentation telling us what they're doing. And then we will go into some discussion, and then hopefully we'll have some time for question and answers. Okay, so can we start the video, please?
All right, so check. Good afternoon. Hopefully we'll have time to go through all the three presentations in the discussion. So my name is Francesco Marconi. I'm the strategy manager at the Associated Press in the co-leading automation. And today I want to tell you a little bit about some of the projects that we are doing leveraging artificial intelligence. But I want to explore a different perspective, and that perspective is that usually when we talk about innovation, we tend to focus too much on the technology rather than what it enables. So I want to tell you today that technology is not really the story, specifically when it comes to artificial intelligence. The way I want to guide you through this is to show you three specific examples where the Associated Press leverage artificial intelligence in the background. So this first image is an image of a person who was enslaved for 20 years, reuniting with a family member. And this is part of an investigation that the Associated Press did in 2016, which won the Pulitzer Prize. What's interesting here is that we were doing an investigative piece on the fishing industry in Southeast Asia, and through over almost 2 years, and we found that there were over 2,000 people being enslaved. And the way, one component that we used to capture this information is that we used computer vision, which is a subdomain of artificial intelligence, to track how the fishing ships that were carrying slaves were moving. And so we leverage AI to expose this situation. So in this case, the story is not really what technology we used, it's the impact that that story has. And in this case, 2,000 people were freed as a direct result of this investigation. The second example that I want to show you is just a few or a couple interesting images that we captured at the Rio Olympics in Brazil. And what's interesting about these photos is that they provide a perspective that you would normally wouldn't get. And you might ask, how were you able to do this? We didn't have like any ladders or someone hanging from the ceiling, but we had these automated cameras that moved around to capture really powerful images from a completely different angle. So again, the story here is not about the technology or the equipment, it's about how technology can augment human creativity. And then the last example, very quickly, during the coverage of the first 100 days of President Trump, we wanted to do an analysis from a different perspective. And what we did is that we analyzed millions and millions of data points coming from Twitter using machine learning. And we found really interesting insights of how people were responding to different things that the president was saying on Twitter. The story here is not that we use this super complex network analysis or machine learning, but it's about getting a perspective into a story driven by data. And again, the story is not the technology, the story is about journalism and what you can do with artificial intelligence. Just a quick shout out for tomorrow's masterclass. We'll be discussing best practices in automation. My colleague Lisa Gibbs and I will be hosting it at 10 a.m. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the journalist perspective because I'm a journalist, and talking about automation and, you know, working for a newspaper like El Pais that, you know, turned 40 last year, and that's made of brilliant journalists, I can say a journalist is never replaceable. That's a belief. And what I, you know, the technology nowadays, what I mean by this is that there are some processes in the newsroom that can be automated. And I'm talking about distribution and delivery. I just want to pay attention to this video that we recorded at the newsroom. And I'll explain all that you see, but I just want you to think about how nowadays legacy media like mine, like El Pais, still have a very important part that is print, and that's reality. It's going down slowly, but it's still a big part for great companies, you know, around the world. And how technology can actually bring automation and bridge a gap between what's the past, still a part of the present, print, and the future, present, also the cell phone. So let's look at the video and I'll explain a little bit. Yeah, that's mainly it. So this is not fiction, or it's not a project, this is reality. What we did is we developed a bot that actually delivers news in Facebook. So what you can do is go to the bot, talk to it, I guess, him, and you can ask, you know, I like Real Madrid or Barcelona, and then it will subscribe you to the news that we publish. It will learn from you, so it will send you the news in the time that you say. I mean, I just want to receive alerts from 9 to 10, or I don't want to receive alerts at night. It will also tell you what's the weather where you are at. It will say like it's actually 45 degrees in Madrid, which is not fiction also. And it will just have conversations with you. And that's a reality in the Facebook Messenger app. We have bots in Slack for internal use. We have bots in Twitter. But then we thought like, okay, everybody's having their cell phones in their pockets, and we still have a lot of people who buy the newspaper. So in the past F8 conference at Facebook, they released this possibility of personalizing the code. So this is what we did. I mean, as I said, El Pais was founded in '76, and our main readership nowadays is mobile, more than desktop, more than anything. I mean, we have an increasing readership, millions, in Latin America and Spain. So that's what we do, this is how our Facebook editions look like, and we wanted to bridge the two of them. So Facebook Messenger is helping us doing that. And these codes, you scan them with your cell phone, and they will bring you to the bot. But in the past F8 conference, Facebook allowed us to actually personalize the tags that we have in our archive. So you can actually design a code for anything. So what we did, and this is the example that you just saw, French elections, we publish like these big stories, big profiles, Marine Le Pen, whatever you have, Macron, and then you print the newspaper, and unfortunately the news there are dead when you print them. I mean, that's what happens, right? So what we did is publish this in-depth analysis, these profiles, things that don't just die when you print them, and then we put in the front page and inside these codes that would subscribe you to French elections. So you would get the results as they happen. So you buy the newspaper, 1.50 cheap, and then like you scan the code with your Facebook Messenger app, and then you get the results as they are happening. And it's interesting because it's allowing us to actually bypass the distribution through website, through search engines, and go straight to those who actually buy the newspaper. As you see, this is how the design look like, and you can make them as small as you want or as big as you want. And we're bringing it into our system. We publish a couple of them every week, and automating distribution is something that allows us to reach a great personalization and not losing what I think is never going to be automatized, at least in a newspaper like mine, which is like writing news. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Jen on behalf of News Republic. Quick question, is everybody warm enough? I'm a little bit concerned. I can see scarves and hats coming out, getting a little bit chilly. This is clearly not an example of an AI implemented climate control system. We'll try and sort that out for next year. I'll try and keep it short because I know we're running a little bit long on the presentations, but I just wanted to say a few words, which I'll break down into three main sections. The first one really is to give you an introduction to News Republic, who we are, and why we should be talking to you about AI and automated systems. The second part is what we're currently doing in that area, in that domain, and some of the things that perhaps you can do also. And then the third part, it really is just setting the scene for our future discussion to talk about how and where you may start to learn and embrace AI-powered technologies for the benefit of your own respective newsrooms. Just before that, I want to lighten the tone slightly. I'll give you a few seconds to read that. So I put this up there for a couple of reasons. The first one is to try and dispel the concept or the perception that AI is black magic, is the dark arts. It really is an enabling suite of technologies, not something that's going to, in the realm of science fiction, replacing human journalists. It really is about empowering journalism to better serve your audience and allow you to do the higher end, higher value activities. The second part is like any emerging technology, although AI has been around for a good 70 years, but as it's now flavor of the month, it's filled with jargon. And hopefully as we talk through this afternoon, we'll dispel some of the misquotes and help perhaps with some of the understandings. So who the hell is News Republic? Well, News Republic is part of the Cheetah Mobile Group, and we're probably the largest, or in fact are the largest publisher you've never heard of. We have over 600 million active users, unique users, and as a personalized licensed news aggregation service, we work with over 2,500 partners, content partners, from Associated Press, Pais up here on the stage, all the way through to one-man and small team blog and niche websites. We serve, in fact, closer to 2 billion page views per month, so that gives us a lot of data, and this is just within the new service. And in terms of AI, that's really our next big bet. We have just under 300 people working either principally or solely on machine learning and AI techniques. So what are we doing in this realm? So for us, as a free mobile app, the transaction that takes place with the end user is very much an exchange of time. So when a user gives you time, you expect something back. So it's very, very important for us to predict what is the most appealing, what's likely to be the most appealing, most relevant news for that user, knowing very little about them, and that's where machine learning really comes to play for us. It's about constructing a user profile. We can triangulate a number of things to start with. I'll perhaps touch on those a little bit later as we move forward, and matching that with a content profile which you assign or build for every one of our articles and pieces of content on our CMS. In terms of buzz speak, warning of the technical terms, within the realm of AI, which encompasses a whole range of disciplines and techniques, our focus really is on enhancing the relevance of our systems. So we use machine learning, natural language processing to understand the nature and the subject, the essential subject of articles and of videos and images, as well as working with recommendation research communities to improve our own knowledge and to get new ideas about how we can work more smartly and more effectively. There are three principal areas that we bring this to bear. The first one is on the first user experience, the first time experience. This is a critical period in your partnership or your relationship with an end user, and it's absolutely vital to get this right. If you manage to get a download against all the odds, the best thing is to try and keep that customer. So getting that right experience first time round is primordial for us as a mobile app publisher. Partly within that is image optimization. So this is about not changing images in any way, but making sure we use the best image, the most appealing image, the most relevant image from those given to us by our partners that we serve into the app. And the third one, and probably the most important, is alerts and notifications. This is a very powerful tool, but a very dangerous tool as well. And we try our best with the assets we have to deliver the most relevant news alert to an individual user in the hope that engages their principal interests and they come back for more. If we get that wrong, that's a really, really efficient way of losing a user. So just wrapping up quickly, I'll just give you essentially the headlines, and we may get a chance to go into this, but in terms of where journalists and smaller organizations can learn, for me, the first thing is to understand that AI and machine learning is a platform and a suite of enabling tools. So first thing to do is to look at software as a service, apps which are AI powered, which can help you in the newsroom. And that could be for positive feedback on article selection, a lot of the different things in terms of the editorial choices you make. We can also start very simply, things like user support, and we'll touch perhaps on chatbots, or certainly hopefully touch on chatbots a little bit later on, and how you deal with users and how you can free up your resources to focus on the journalism, but also take that feedback and use it constructively. And whilst it's a misconception that programmatic advertising is AI powered, it's been around too long for that. There are now emerging companies providing programmatic with some AI techniques. So having your editorial and journalists working in tandem with your monetization team is a great way to get to understand what is and what isn't AI. In terms of areas for perhaps, I'd say low-hanging fruit, but areas to start taking action, The first one is about article research. So one of the things that AP have done already is can automatically build articles that you can that are done purely by AI, as well as researching background topics for journalists. Creating infographics, visual interaction is one of the most important elements in the mobile experience. Image optimization, again, you can have 10 images of Donald Trump, but one of them will tell a story which is most relevant to the article that you have, and it will be the one which is most appealing to a user to dive in and engage with your content. So that's a very, very high-level way, but a very straightforward way to work with AI. And then finally, working out editorial choices not based on subjective judgment, but based much more on metrics and intelligent decisions.
Okay, great. So very, very interesting and amazing that what's happening. And first thing I really noticed is that there are so many different kinds of areas that in journalism that the AI is working. Partially in news generation, and the total automation is only done, I understand, in like a financial report or climate, climate or sports game result. Those are the things that I understand that the total automation is done for news generation part, but the news delivery and then as well as personalization is something that is already done. And where else is still, very reachable area that AI can do? Anyone, maybe, yeah.
Coming from a newspaper that publishes online in Spanish, English, Portuguese, Catalan, anything that you can imagine, we've tried automatic translation. And as other experiences showed, automated reporting, whatever, you always need, when it comes to content, some part of human input, at least some addition. But there are programs that are getting there, and the more similar the languages are, the more efficient the automatic translation can be. And I think that's another area that artificial intelligence, automatic translation, changing some words, like adapting it to sensitivities. I think it's important.
Okay, and then, yes, Francesco.
Yeah. Oh. So I think as news publishers, we tend to focus on two main things. One is volume of content. The other one is differentiation. So how unique is the story that you're telling to your audience? And the way we think about artificial intelligence at the Associated Press is that we ask ourselves a set of questions. So are we focusing on automation, or are we focusing on augmentation? So automation is the process of essentially automatically creating stories. As Noriko mentioned, it works really well for financial data or sports data, where you can turn that data into a brief overview of what happened. And then the second component is related to augmentation. So the role of artificial intelligence is not to displace the journalist, but it's to enhance them to do more work and more find new angles. So this idea of helping the human do things that he wouldn't normally do. So I showed you a very brief example of how we were able to analyze millions and millions of data points from Twitter very, very quickly using artificial intelligence, and have a unique story angle for that. And then the second big question that we ask ourselves when it comes to AI strategy is related to, are we trying to deploy AI for content or for process? So an example of content is summarization, as David mentioned, or translation. The process has to do with the things that your editors would normally do. So imagine using computer vision to be able to automatically create captions or tags for the photos that go into your article. So.
Interesting. So, and then in your case, you use like visual optimizations and so forth, and personalization and user experience.
That's a large part. So I think I'd just reiterate the elements there that I really see AI techniques as an empowering tool as opposed to a replacement tool. I think that's in all of the implementations that you can have, the vast amount of the value to be yielded is very much from that. It's about enhancing the things you do to make you more efficient at your core activities. So from our side, for example, and I think still, since we've had the advent of deep learning and AI is starting to deliver on some of the promises from its early days in the 50s when we were looking at this to conquer the world, it's still not a perfect system. And as journalism is a very emotive or emotional subject, there's always that human element which can't always be replicated by even the cleverest of systems. So for example, for us, I touched on news alerts as one of the powerful tools that we use. What we do is we have machine learning to scour our content management system, bring together, segment, first of all, analyze our user base to segment into 40 or 50 groups, the types of things that they would likely respond to, whether that's sports, entertainment, celebrity gossip, breaking stories, local news, etc. And then the machine learning tool selects 30 or 40 stories for each of those segments. And then our news editors, just to be clear, we don't produce news, we serve their news. So the editor is simply there to pick what they feel is a relevant story and push it out to the end users. So it really is if you like, the last mile, which is the human intervention, but the legwork is done by the machine learning platform.
Interesting. So,
No, I mean, it's very interesting what you both say, but the point is that, I mean, let's face it, many of the main big news companies have lost their distribution power. We control all the distribution and we employed a lot of people. And there's a lot of distraction of labor going on. So it's normal that you go to a newsroom and you talk about robots or artificial intelligence and people panic. It's normal and they don't like it. And I think we are at fault, the editors or like the managers at these outlets, when explaining that actually artificial intelligence can help those people do a better job. Because I mean, it doesn't matter how many like new programs that we have, like we still haven't come up with the artificial intelligence program that will allow every single piece of news that we publish not have a single mistake, you know, spelling, grammar, whatever. And I mean, that's something that is not being done because, you know, there are always mistakes. But I think we have to actually be a little, you know, we have to be evangelists in the newsroom by telling that, you know, artificial intelligence is going to help employees.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, you know, we have all these, you know, we hear all these AI technologies, and then you in your newsroom want to do something with that technology. Which comes first, you know, do you know all the enabling technologies and then you think you can introduce that to your process? Or do you think that you want to do something and you ask programmers to do, you know, program the way that you want it to work?
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very important to take a perspective on this, and it should never be the technology driving the business. Whichever aspect of journalism you work in, essentially you're doing it as a full-time role for most of us at least. As a result, it's a business, and the technology should never drive the business. It's the business which drives the technology. So it's very much about looking at the cognitive bottlenecks that you have, areas where you're spending a lot of potentially low-value labor in doing tasks, which you could perhaps automate in an intelligent way. So it's very much, I think, you know, from David's point about the senior elements of any organization, learning and engaging in the possibilities of different AI systems, understanding which ones may be relevant or useful, and it's not a single solution which fits for everybody, and then starting to work with their teams to see where that is or in fact isn't relevant. So it's not that bandwagon jumping over, right, we must have something with AI in, otherwise we're not cool. You know, it's where it will fit your business. And perhaps for some organizations, there isn't really an application. I think that as we move forward and the potential develops, that it'll be ubiquitous in our lives, both our daily lives and our professional lives. But it's really about what provides a business benefit, not doing it just to tick the box.
What about you?
Yeah, so technology is not the story, as I mentioned. When we are thinking about deploying all of these different tools, we need to deploy them with something very specific in mind. It needs to solve a very specific problem. So when deploying any type of strategy, a digital strategy, a social strategy, and an artificial intelligence strategy, it needs to solve something that we are challenged with. For AP specifically, back in 2014, it was a journalist that first suggested automating the financial news reports, specifically earnings reports, because it's a very repetitive process. The structure is always the same, and so we were devoting a lot of time to content that that didn't have differentiation, important content, but we spent a lot of time writing those stories. And so as a result, we decided to collaborate with an emerging startup at the time, Automated Insights, that allows you to turn data into written stories. And we went from covering 400 companies for the specific case of earnings reports to 4,000 companies, almost like a 10x increase. And this increase in volume of coverage had real world impact. We actually did a study with Stanford University where we measured the impact on trading and stock liquidity. And what we found is that there were more trades going on because people have access to more information into companies that they wouldn't normally read about. But beyond the volume, I think the most impactful thing that our automation strategy accomplished was that we were able to free up resources of those journalists that were doing that very data-intensive work, and have them devote to other forms of journalism, visual storytelling, virtual reality, investigations. And I think the stat is that we were able to free up about 20% of the reporter's time, specifically on the business desk.
I'm kind of interested in the process of how you really inserted this new technology. For example, in your story, which won Pulitzer Prize for the fishing industry and the slavery, which came first? The computer vision technology that you thought you could use, or you were already searching and making up stories, and then you found about this computer technology, vision technology?
Yeah, so it has been a very organic process in the sense that our journalists are trying to solve a problem or find a new angle, and then our role within the strategy and technology department is understanding the key trends in the market, the key capabilities, and then try to implement these technologies. So the journalism always drives everything that we do. And in some cases, the technologies work so well and enable us to do more and better that we end up investing in some startups that do this type of work.
So David, in your company, you have a parent company, and then they have a lab, right?
Yeah.
And then in that case, how do they search for the new technologies that you can use? How do you find the talent and technology?
Well, for us, I mean, it's interesting, this debate between like journalism and technology, and we do journalism and we stand with journalism, and that's what we do wherever we are, and I mean, that's our brand. Our brand is not technology. I mean, we're a platform that publishes news and opinion and whatever you may have. Now, I would like to have unlimited resources, and I would like my company to have unlimited resources, but that is not the case. I believe tomorrow Martin Baron is going to be speaking here. I mean, when Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, what they did was having like engineers in every desk to work with the journalists, but we don't have that. So it's true we have a parent company, they provide with technology, but what we found most rewarding is partnering with platforms. I know this may be controversial, most of all for those who have paywalls, but we have an excellent relationship with Facebook, we have an excellent relationship with Google. They offer us a technology that we would never dream about. They have teams that develop user experience enhancements that we could never dream about. We're in Google AMP, we are in, you know, Facebook Instant Articles, Facebook Editions, and actually this bot that you just saw is developed with Facebook technology.
Right.
So yeah, we have like people who will design this type of developments in-house, but I have to say, love the platforms. We don't have a paywall. We have increased our traffic tenfold in the past years, and that's thanks to them and their technology.
I see. Robert, in your case, the News Republic is like very digital from the start, right?
It's only digital, yes.
Yeah. And so how do you employ people who have AI technologies? Like, you know, in AI programmers, they are the most in demand, and they are hired by technology companies with, you know, eye-popping salaries. And how do you do that?
With some difficulty. So I think there are two elements I just wanted to highlight. First of all, you don't need AI experts to implement AI techniques. It'll be a platform which becomes increasingly pervasive through a set of tools that you can use, or apps that you can ride upon or inject content into. In the same way that cloud computing, you can use Dropbox. Very simply off the bat, you don't need to be a cloud computing expert to use Dropbox. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it serves a number of business needs. But from our perspective, yes, we, as I mentioned in the initial introduction, we have close to 300 people working principally or solely on that activity. But in the same way that virtual reality and web design and programming are sought after techniques, and also having an office in Palo Alto. It's always a bit of a fluid system, let's say, where people come and go. So it's just market forces which you encounter in pretty much every discipline. I think you mentioned, Francisco, that you had your VR editor move from your company to another. I think that's just the nature of the world, but for most companies, because all we do is digital content on mobile, that needs to be an implicit part of what we do. But I think for most journalists, organizations, it's about understanding the tools and app-based services, software as a service, that are available to you, and choosing and working with and understanding what could be best for you.
Okay. And in Francesco's case, you know, you are affiliated with various places where technology is yourself. I mean, you know, Media Lab and Columbia University. Are you in this? Do you think that's the way that the journalists should be in the future, to really understand and, you know, be in touch with the very, you know, front of the technology yourself, to be able to introduce the technology into newsroom?
Yeah, I mean, I think the role of the journalist is changing, and even the education of journalists is changing. I teach at Columbia, and I see this at, you know, firsthand, of how the skills that are required are more like a computer programmer or engineer that needs to learn new languages every year. And so the same thing goes with journalists, and you start seeing that in innovative newsrooms throughout the world, where it's not only about being good at storytelling, but also understanding what technology can enable you to do. And you mentioned, you know, the research institutions and universities that I'm affiliated with. I think having that sort of open dialogue between news organizations and research centers and startups is crucial, because, you know, let's face it, that's where most of innovation surfaces, and that can be an approach for legacy or traditional news organizations find new ways of doing things. You know, and one last thought is that when we look at new technology, we ask the question of whether we should buy it, should we partner, or should we, you know, develop the expertise in-house. So
we have only like one and a half minute.
You've been cut off.
Yes, already. Can I ask if you have any questions from the audience? Maybe we have one question. Maybe we have time for the one question.
Why is it so hot?
Yeah.
it's a question.
Okay. Here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Dimitri. I work for BBC World Service and looking after digital operation for 28 languages there. And my question is to David about the El Pais bot. So we have launched BBC Mundo bot for Latin America as well recently. And my question is to you, can you share the practicalities of how you promoted the bot? How did you make sure that people know about it? Because from my experience, what we see with BBC Mundo is that obviously the website's reaching 25 million people a month, but the bot is nowhere near getting the numbers. What about you? Thank you.
Well, you know, printing codes for the bot in a print newspaper is pretty good advertisement. And we published stories. And yeah, I mean, there was a PR campaign associated with it, you know, launching a little explanation on how to use it. But I mean, it depends also on how you measure success. We wanted to reach younger people. You know, our base is like, for print is, you know, below, above 50, you know. So we wanted to go below. And those people buying ads in Facebook and promoting in other social networks, putting it there, I think that works.
Okay, so we wanted to talk a lot more, but the time is out. Maybe we can continue talking during our conference. Thank you so much for our panelists.
Thank you, Noriko.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and Noriko, and I hope you will come back to your newsroom with new ideas related to automated newsrooms and automated processes. So I'm